The table is still set, forks perfectly aligned, a bowl of soup warming gently in the same chipped porcelain I've had for years. I lay out the spoons like I always used to, one for each of them, though no one is coming. I don't even know why I do it anymore. Habit, maybe. Hope, maybe. Or maybe it's just because it's the only moment in the day that still feels like I have a purpose. I stir the broth slowly, letting the steam fog up my glasses. The room is quiet, too quiet. No footsteps upstairs. No doors creaking open. No laughter in the hallway. Just me, my old sweater that smells faintly of mothballs and ginger, and the clock on the wall ticking away the time like it's counting down something that's already gone. There was a time this kitchen was loud. Pans clanging, children bickering, someone always needing something. I used to be in the center of it all. I held everything together with lists, leftovers, and love. I thought if I just poured enough of myself into everyone else, they'd never leave. They'd always come back. They'd know this table meant more than just a place to eat. It was where we were a family. I used to wipe down the chairs every night, even after they moved out, just in case one of them surprised me. They never did. Last week I made stew the way my youngest used to like it, sweet potatoes instead of carrots. I even set out her old chipped bowl, the one with the little green flower on the rim. I waited until the steam disappeared and the stew cooled into something lifeless. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out, so I ate it myself alone in silence. I don't know which part tasted more bitter, the food or the memory. Sometimes I catch myself rehearsing what I'd say if one of them walked through the door right now. I'd pretend not to be too happy. I'd smile casually, wipe my hands on a towel, and say, "Well, look who finally decided to visit." I play the scene out in my head over and over, as if that would somehow make it real. But it never is. The phone doesn't ring. The door doesn't knock. The soup cools. I used to believe family was everything. That's what they say in those glossy picture frames and holiday commercials. Family is home. Family is forever. I bought into it like it was gospel. Gave up opportunities, friends, trips, even small luxuries, all to keep this home warm, to keep their hearts close. But now the house is warm and empty. The heat hums through the vents, and the silence drips into every room like water from a forgotten faucet. The worst part isn't the absence, it's the pretending. Pretending I'm fine. Pretending I like quiet. Pretending I didn't notice how Mother's Day came and went without so much as a card. They'll say they were busy. They always are. Life gets in the way. That's what they'll say if I ever ask. So I don't. I never ask anymore. Tonight I'll set the table again. Not because I expect anyone, but because it helps me remember who I used to be. Someone who mattered in someone else's life. Someone whose meals meant comfort, whose presence meant home. I keep doing it because some tiny, stubborn part of me still believes in the possibility of return. Maybe not today, maybe not ever. But belief is funny like that. It lingers long after the reason for it has disappeared. And as I sit down with one bowl, one spoon, and one too many memories, I wonder quietly, was I wrong? Is love really something that comes back to you? Or is it just something you give and give, until there's nothing left but empty chairs and full silence? I left a voicemail last Sunday. I still remember what I said, something simple like, "Just calling to hear your voice, sweetheart. No rush, just call me when you can. Love you." I kept it short because I didn't want to sound needy. I've learned to measure my words like teaspoons of sugar, not too much, never too much. I waited the rest of the day with the phone beside me, volume turned up high, just in case I missed the ring. I even kept it next to my pillow when I went to bed, like some people sleep with books or prayer beads. The next morning I checked the log. Delivered. Read. Nothing else. No call back. No message. Just that cold gray word, read. Funny how a single word can feel like a slap, like someone looking you straight in the face and walking away. There was a time they called me every day, not because they had to, but because I was part of their life. I'd hear about the burnt toast, the funny coworker, the new shoes they found on sale, ordinary things, the beautiful clutter of daily connection. I used to believe those were forever, that no matter how far life scattered us, they'd always think to reach back. But slowly the calls got shorter, then less frequent. Now it's been weeks since I've heard their voice, and somehow they always have a reason. Busy schedules, deadlines, errands. The excuses arrive more reliably than the affection. I know the world spins faster now. I know they're juggling 1,000 things I can't see. But I also know this: it takes less than a minute to say I miss you, less than a breath to say I love you. And yet silence has become their answer, not in anger, not even in cruelty, just absence. And I don't know what's more painful, being hated or being forgotten. After I left that voicemail, I spent the afternoon reorganizing the linen closet. I folded towels with perfect corners, lined up sheets by color. It's what I do when my heart aches in ways I can't explain. Try to make some small part of the world neat and quiet and under control, as if by folding a blanket just right, I could fold back time, back to when they were little and couldn't sleep unless I hummed their favorite lullaby, back to when my voice mattered. I used to think I'd always be their first call in joy, in sorrow, in need. But somewhere along the line, I became the last, or maybe not even on the list. It's a strange feeling realizing you're no longer central, that you've shifted from lifeline to footnote, from the person they ran to the one they update out of obligation if they remember. Sometimes I wonder if I'm partly to blame. Maybe I gave too much, said yes too often. Maybe in always being there, I made it too easy to take me for granted. I don't say this with bitterness, just an aching kind of clarity, the kind that only arrives in silence. I played that voicemail back to myself once. I wanted to hear how I sounded. It was warm, I think, not sad, just hopeful. Hopeful in that foolish, tender way mothers are when they believe they still matter. I sounded like someone who hadn't given up yet. I wish I could say that message was the last one I'll leave, that I've decided not to reach out again. But the truth is, I probably will. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week. But someday I'll leave another soft message, not because I expect a reply, but because I still need to believe that somewhere inside them, there's a piece of their heart still tuned to my voice. Because even when silence grows louder than love, there's a part of me that whispers, what if they listen next time? Mother's Day used to be my favorite. I don't mean because of the gifts, though. I still keep a few of their old crayon cards tucked inside a recipe book. The colors faded, the letters uneven but full of love. I mean the feeling. Waking up knowing they were thinking of me, planning something, even if it was just breakfast toast with too much jam or a walk around the garden. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about being seen, being remembered. But that year, the first year, they didn't call. It felt like a funeral. I woke up early like I always did, brushed my hair, put on the blouse they once complimented, pale blue with tiny buttons, the kind that made me feel elegant in a quiet way. I sat on the porch and waited, teacup in hand, heart open like an old book, still hoping someone might read it. Morning passed. Afternoon, evening, nothing. Not a ding, not a ring, not even one of those cold, impersonal flower delivery mistakes some people get from their employer. Just air. Just time stretching longer than I thought possible. I told myself stories, the kind that comfort you, before they start to sting. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe the card was delayed in the mail. Maybe the phone would buzz at night and they'd say, "You didn't think we'd forget, did you?" But night came, and with it the kind of silence that feels like someone closing a door inside your soul. I made myself dinner that night, just toast and an egg, too tired to bother with more. I turned on the TV and stared at it blankly, though I couldn't tell you what was playing. It was the sound I needed, not the story. Anything to cover up the quiet reminder that I wasn't needed anymore, not even once a year. The next day I got a text from my eldest, a single sentence. No happy Mother's Day. No, sorry I missed you. Just things have been hectic. Hope you're good. Hope I'm good. As if that hope could substitute for presence, for love, for the soft, sacred act of being remembered. I cried that night, but only for a moment, just enough to let the ache out. I didn't want to give sadness too much space. It takes over if you let it. I've learned how to cry like a woman who has cried too many times quietly, with a tissue already ready and the kettle already boiling. After that, I started treating Mother's Day like any other. No expectations, no waiting. I go for a walk, maybe buy myself something small, a flower, a secondhand book, a new pair of socks. Something to remind myself that I can still offer myself kindness, even if no one else remembers to. I stopped telling other people how it made me feel. No one really wants to hear that a mother is lonely on Mother's Day. It makes them uncomfortable. People prefer the smiling kind of mother, the one who says, "Oh, my kids, they're just so busy, bless their hearts," with a laugh that hides the wound. But I'm not angry. That would be easier, actually. Anger is sharp, it has edges. But what I feel is softer, heavier, like a wet coat you can't take off. I miss being someone's reason to celebrate. I miss being important enough to mark the day. Now, when I pass by the seasonal card aisles, I glance at the pink and lavender rows and keep walking. I don't stop anymore. I used to linger reading every line, imagining which one they might have picked. Now I walk past, because I know no one's picking anything. Not for me. But even now, even with all the forgetting, I can't quite bring myself to stop remembering. I still wake up early on that day. I still put on the blue blouse. I still brew the tea and sit on the porch. And somewhere deep inside, a little girl I used to be pats my shoulder and says, "It's okay, Mama. I see you. I remember." And somehow, that's enough to keep me going. They gave me a couch for my birthday one year, a lovely one, truth be told. Soft beige with little floral embroidery along the seams, the kind of thing you'd find in a catalog under cozy elegance. It was delivered with a note unsigned, just typed, "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope you like it." I didn't know who picked it out, or if anyone had even seen it in person before clicking order, but I placed it by the window, where the sun pools gently in the afternoon, and told myself it was a gift from the heart. The first few days I didn't sit on it. I kept it pristine like a guest was coming. I fluffed the pillows each morning and ran my hand across the cushions like I was brushing off invisible crumbs of hope. I imagined anyone might drop by and say, "This is nice, Mom. Let's have tea here." But no one did. No one came. And over time, the couch became just another place for me to sit and think too much. I remember the day I stopped pretending it was temporary. I pulled a blanket from the closet, one with tiny holes and memories in the weave, and draped it over the backrest. I made the couch mine. Not ours. Not for visitors. Not for the family I kept pretending might walk through the door. Just mine. Sometimes I catch myself looking at it and wondering if they imagine me there. Do they think of me when they curl into their own couches at night, full from dinner, kids asleep in their rooms? Do they imagine I'm somewhere warm and safe, happy with my quiet, or do they forget entirely, not out of cruelty, but convenience? That couch sits in the room that used to echo with laughter and running feet. Now it holds my weight and the heaviness of words unspoken. I talk to myself sometimes, just a few murmured lines here and there, narrating small thoughts aloud because silence can feel so endless. Don't forget the laundry. That plant needs watering. Maybe I'll make soup today. Little anchors to keep me from drifting too far into loneliness. I think they thought the couch would replace presence. That comfort could be mailed in a box. That being thought of was the same as being held. But presence, it can't be wrapped in plastic and delivered to a doorstep. It has to be felt. Warm eyes meeting yours, hands passing the sugar bowl, feet curled under shared blankets. Presence is the heartbeat of love, and no furniture, no matter how beautiful, can substitute for that. They haven't seen it in person, not once. They haven't asked if it fits the space or how it makes me feel, but sometimes they'll say, "We got you that nice couch, didn't we?" as if that gesture closes the case on all the distance. And I nod, because what else can I say? "Yes, it's lovely," I reply. I don't add, "But it's never been sat on by anyone but me." I used to dream of movie nights again, of popcorn bowls and too many blankets and someone falling asleep halfway through a film. I dreamed of grandkids curled into me, of voices overlapping in a room too small for everyone, but too full to care. Now my movies are quiet and solo. My popcorn always goes stale halfway through, and I still leave the second mug out on the coffee table just in case. Maybe that's the hardest part, the waiting that never names itself. The door that's not locked, but never opens. The couch that's soft, but always empty. I sit there sometimes watching the street, wondering how many other mothers sit alone on birthday gifts meant to make up for absence. But I'm learning to reclaim it, slowly, deliberately. I read there now, wrapped in that old blanket. I stretch out and let my legs fall, where once I reserved space for someone else. I sip my tea slowly like I'm the guest I've been waiting for. And sometimes, just sometimes, I feel whole. Not because they remembered me, but because I remembered myself. Last Christmas, I wrapped each gift slowly like I was folding pieces of myself into the paper. A scarf for the oldest. A little music box for the middle one she used to love the ones that played lullabies. And for the youngest, a book of poems the same kind I used to read aloud when she couldn't sleep. I tied each ribbon carefully, smoothing the edges until they felt perfect. Not because I thought they'd notice, but because I needed to believe someone might care that I did. I didn't go inside their homes. I didn't ring the bell. I just placed the packages gently at the threshold like offerings, like prayers. I stood there for a moment in the cold, hearing nothing on the other side of the door but the hum of life I no longer belonged to. There were voices inside, I could hear them faintly. Laughter, a clink of glass, the kind of sounds I used to orchestrate. But I didn't knock. It wasn't fear, it was dignity, maybe, or a kind of quiet self-preservation. I told myself, they're busy. I told myself they'll call when they see the gifts. And then I walked away, my breath fogging up in little clouds, my steps leaving soft indentations in the frost. They didn't call, not even to say thank you. Days passed, and I imagined the gifts opened without my name being spoken. Or worse, not opened at all. Pushed aside, forgotten beneath the clutter of shinier things. Sometimes I think love has an expiration date in their world. If it doesn't arrive with flashing lights or perfect timing, it's as if it never existed. I spent that Christmas Eve with my hands wrapped around a cup of tea and my eyes locked on the window, pretending to watch the snow. In truth, I was listening for a knock, a phone call, the ring of something unexpected and warm. It never came. I used to host Christmas. God, the memories. The smell of cinnamon and cloves, the sounds of tearing wrapping paper, and shrieks of joy. I used to have a system stockings labeled candles lit just right, dessert time to come out as everyone was settling into contentment. I didn't just feed their stomachs. I fed their spirits. I made holidays feel like magic, like they were walking into love incarnate. I thought that would earn me a permanent place in their hearts. But hearts are strange. They forget what they've held, what they've been held by. They make room for new people, new traditions, new memories. And sometimes without meaning to, they quietly erase the ones that made them strong enough to love at all. That night I tucked myself into bed with the old Christmas quilt my mother had sewn when I was a girl. I ran my fingers over the frayed embroidery, tiny trees, crooked stars. I whispered a quiet Merry Christmas to the room, to no one, to everyone I've ever loved. And then I cried, not loudly, not bitterly, just tears that rolled down into my ears as I lay there blinking at the ceiling. I wasn't mourning a holiday. I was mourning a feeling, the feeling of being part of something, of being the reason a room glowed warmer. But when the morning came, I got up. I opened the curtains. I made a cup of cocoa just for me, extra marshmallows, the way I used to make it for them. I lit a candle and whispered a poem into the quiet. I didn't need to be surrounded by people to be surrounded by love. Because love, I'm learning, doesn't always come back to you in the way you gave it. But that doesn't mean it disappears. Sometimes it just changes form. Sometimes it turns inward, into strength, into softness, into the quiet wrapping of one's own heart, like a gift that no one else thought to open. They used to need me, all the time. The calls would come at every hour, a fever at midnight, a rent payment short by the weekend, a broken heart that needed soup and silence. And I was there, always. I'd leave the kettle halfway boiled, my book spine up on the arm of the chair, and go. I didn't think. I didn't ask questions. I just showed up with open arms and grocery bags with tissues and an open heart, because that's what mothers do. That's what I thought love meant, never saying no. There was a time when one of them called crying from the side of a highway, out of gas, out of luck. I drove across town without a second thought. I remember I hadn't even changed out of my slippers. I just grabbed my coat and went. Another time I spent my entire savings to cover a last-minute tuition fee. I told myself it was an investment, not in a degree, but in our bond, in being needed. But lately, then, there's no asking, no calling, not for help, not for company, not even for advice. And it's not because life suddenly got easy for them. I know that. I know life never stops demanding. But now their needs are met elsewhere. Partners, friends, apps, strangers even. And me, I've become a dusty emergency contact in a file somewhere. The person listed under, just in case, but never actually dialed. The worst part isn't that they stopped needing me. It's that when I needed them, not often, just once or twice, I was met with silence. Or delay. Or that clipped, distracted voice that says, "I'm a little busy right now, can we talk later?" And later never comes. I once had the flu so badly I couldn't get out of bed. I texted for help. No one came. I ended up eating crackers and drinking water from the tap, lying under 4 blankets and telling myself I'd be fine. I was, but not because of them. Sometimes I wonder if they think I'm indestructible, that because I never complained, never asked, I must not feel pain. But strength doesn't mean invincibility, and sacrifice. It doesn't mean you have no limits. I think of all the times I canceled my own life to be there for theirs, the dinners I missed, the friends I lost touch with, the job opportunities I quietly let go of, all so I could answer the phone, hold a hand, lend a shoulder. I built my days around their needs, and now my days are empty, and they don't even notice the space they once filled. I don't blame them. Not really. I don't think they understand what it cost. How quiet the house became once the echoes of "Mom, can you" disappeared. I don't think they meant to let me fade. Love, I've learned, doesn't always leave in a dramatic exit. Sometimes it just forgets to say goodbye. But I'm learning now that love given isn't always love returned. That selflessness, though beautiful, can become a trap if it's the only language you speak. And that saying yes to everyone else too long can mean saying no to yourself over and over until you no longer recognize your own voice. I still answer when they call, though they rarely do. I still help when they ask, though they rarely ask. But something inside me has shifted. A quiet, tender resolve. I don't drop everything anymore. I don't rush. I don't bleed for people who don't notice when I'm hurting. Now I finish boiling the kettle. I finish my book. I keep my slippers on a little longer. Not out of spite, but out of love for myself. Because I was never meant to be just a lifeline. I was meant to live too. There's a photo frame in the hallway, the long one with 6 little slots, one for each of us. I picked it out when the kids were still young, thinking it would be something we'd fill together over the years, a timeline of love frozen in smiles. For a while we did. Baby teeth and missing front teeth, graduation caps, birthday cakes, summer tans, sleepy Christmas mornings. I dusted that frame weekly. It was a shrine to everything I thought we were. But one day, while walking past it with a load of laundry in my arms, I noticed the top corner had collected cobwebs. A thin thread stretched across one of their faces, like even the spiders had forgotten to care. I stopped and stared. It wasn't anger that filled me, it was distance. Those photos. They didn't feel warm anymore. They felt historic, like I was looking at someone else's family. Some of the smiles felt foreign, like I didn't remember them that way. Or maybe I didn't remember myself in them. I looked for signs of who I was in those images, not just the background figure holding a cake or adjusting a collar, but me, my face, my joy, my presence. And I realized I was always the one behind the camera, the one missing from the frame. I turned the frame over. One motion, slow, gentle, face down on the hallway table, and then I walked away. It wasn't an act of anger. It wasn't even sadness, not really. It was a kind of quiet funeral. Not for the people in the photos, but for the belief that those images still held power in the present, that looking at them would bring comfort, not grief, that they meant we still belonged to each other, the way we once did. Sometimes they ask about those photos. Didn't you have a picture of us in the hallway? I nod. I put it away. They never ask why. I used to think pictures were proof, that by capturing a moment, you could keep it alive. But time doesn't work that way. You can't frame presence. You can't preserve connection with glass and wood. You have to live it, nurture it, and when it fades, no frame can hold it together. There's a new photo on the mantel now. Just one. It's not even of family, it's of me. A friend took it on a rare day when I said yes to coffee. Yes, to stepping outside my patterns. I'm smiling, really smiling, not for anyone else's benefit, just because I was warm in the sunlight and had just told a joke that made even me laugh. I keep that photo there as a kind of reclaiming, not to replace the others, but to remind myself that I exist outside of other people's definitions, that I'm not just a curator of memories for everyone else, I get to make my own too. Maybe one day I'll put the family frame back up. Maybe. But not because I miss the version of life it represents. If I do, it'll be to honor the truth that once we were close, that once we loved without hesitation, that once they ran to me with scraped knees and breathless stories and full hearts. But today I walk past that empty hallway space and feel a strange peace, like I've made room for something else, something lighter, something present. And I don't have to pretend that an old photograph can fill the space where people used to be. There's an old apron hanging on the back of my kitchen door, pale yellow with faded roses, the strings frayed and the pocket stitched over 3 times where the fabric wore thin. I used to wear it every single day, not just to cook, but to clean, to sew, to hold tiny socks and tissues, and sometimes when I had no free hands, a crying toddler for just a minute longer. That apron carried more of my life than any suitcase ever did. Sometimes I run my fingers along the seams, tracing memories sewn into the cloth. The night I stayed up patching jeans for school the next morning. The mornings I packed lunches with little notes that said, "You're stronger than you think." The years I saved every penny, not for myself, never for myself, but for them. For new shoes, for field trips, for dance lessons and baseball gloves and birthday parties with too many balloons. I never thought twice. I just did it. I clipped coupons. I made meals stretch. I turned leftovers into feasts. I said no to new clothes for me, told myself maybe next month. My winter coat had holes in the sleeves before I ever thought to replace it, and even then I bought it from a clearance bin and smiled like it was luxury. Now I reuse tea bags, not because I have to, not exactly, but because old habits cling like shadows. Because somewhere inside, I still feel guilty spending money on myself. It's as if I'm still living in that old mindset. They first, always they first. I see a scarf in a shop window, soft and blue, and immediately my mind calculates how many groceries that would cover, and I walk on. I remember once I was in line at the market holding a can of peaches I didn't need but wanted, just a little sweetness for myself, and I put it back. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because it felt selfish. After all these years, it still does. Sacrifice becomes invisible after a while. No one sees it. It's not a banner you wave. It's just in the quiet math you do every day, how to stretch, how to go without, how to smile through it. And the saddest part, no one remembers but you. They don't know how many times I chose instant noodles so they could have meat, how I scraped the rice pot clean and called it dinner, how I kept the lights dim to save electricity. It wasn't martyrdom. It was love. That's what I thought then. That love meant giving everything until there was nothing left to give. But lately I've been wondering, where is the line between love and erasure? Because when I look back, I don't see a woman who was loved for her sacrifices. I see a woman who disappeared into them, who became so good at saying yes that no one ever thought she might need to say no. And now when I sit with that apron in my lap, I don't cry, not anymore. I just breathe, slowly, deeply, like I'm trying to fill in all the empty spaces I once gave away. That apron still hangs there, but I don't wear it much anymore. I keep it because it's mine, because it reminds me of who I was and who I'm trying not to be again. I've started using a new one now, soft gray. No flowers, no worn-out seams. It still has a fresh crease from being folded too long. And when I tie it around my waist, I don't do it for anyone else. I cook for myself. I brew my tea strong and let it steep as long as I want. I eat what I crave, not what's cheap or fast. I sit at the table and light a candle even if I'm the only one there. Because I am done rationing myself away. I didn't even know there was a wedding. That's how I found out where I stood. A neighbor mentioned it offhandedly in that cheerful, clueless way people do when they assume you're part of things. "Oh, I saw the pictures. Your granddaughter looked beautiful. Such a lovely dress." I just stood there, clutching the handle of my grocery cart a little tighter. I smiled. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "She did, didn't she?" Like I had been there. Like I had known. But I hadn't. No invitation, no call, not even a text. A whole life milestone passed by, and I was a ghost in it. I went home and sat at the edge of the bed, shoes still on coat, still buttoned, and stared at the wall. I don't know how long I sat like that. Later that evening, I searched for the photos online. There she was, my granddaughter, beaming, surrounded by flowers and friends and laughter, people clapping, dancing, celebrating. She looked radiant, like light itself had dressed her. And I was nowhere, not in the crowd, not in the captions, not even in the acknowledgments. She used to sit on my lap and braid my hair with tiny fingers. We'd make paper crowns and pretend we were queens. I taught her how to tie her shoes, how to hum to herself, when she was scared how to soften butter without melting it. Little things, maybe, but they felt like the whole world back then. I remember the first wedding she ever went to. She was 5. I let her wear one of my scarves like a shawl and painted her tiny nails pink. She whispered, "I want you to help with mine one day." Children make promises like that, sweet and serious and unaware of time, and we believe them because we want to. But time passes and people grow, and sometimes they forget the people who made them feel safe when the world was still big and scary. I didn't cry, not at first. It was too big for crying, the kind of hurt that's too still, too wide, too heavy for tears. But later that night, when the lights were off and I was brushing my teeth, I caught my own reflection in the mirror, and something about the way I looked alone, old, uninvited. It broke me. I leaned against the sink and wept like a child, not just for the wedding, but for all the quiet ways I'd been left behind over the years. The next morning I made tea. I took out the special cup I had saved for that occasion, the one with gold around the rim. I used it anyway, because if I wait for others to give me a reason to celebrate, I'll be waiting forever. I lit a candle and whispered a blessing not for me, but for her. I wished her happiness, peace, a life full of kindness, even if she never remembers where some of that kindness came from. I let go of the need to be seen, or thanked, or even remembered. But I also promised myself something that day. No more pretending I wasn't hurt. No more swallowing silence. If the people I raised can forget me in their brightest hour, I will not forget myself in my quietest. I wore the earrings I had set aside for her wedding, just around the house, just for me. Because dignity, I've learned, doesn't come from being included. It comes from choosing not to disappear when the world forgets you. They still call me sometimes, not to talk, not to visit, not to ask how I've been sleeping, or whether the ache in my hip is better, or if the house feels too cold in the mornings. No, they call when they need something, usually money. Sometimes advice, though, not the kind that honors my wisdom, the kind they ask for only after Google didn't give them the answer. It's always hurried, rushed. "Hey, Mom, real quick," or "Do you happen to know?" And then I hear the clatter of multitasking in the background, keys jingling, horns blaring, voices overlapping mine. I used to wait for these calls like lifelines. Now I recognize them for what they are: transactions. They used to ask for stories. Remember? They'd sit at the table while I shelled peas or folded towels and ask, "What was it like when you were young?" And I would tell them. I'd shape memories into little lanterns, holding them out in my hands, lighting the air between us. And they would listen. Not because they needed anything, just because they wanted to know me. But now, they skip straight to the part where I give. Can I borrow until next week? Do you have any old documents I can use? What was that recipe again? They take my offerings like pennies from a jar. They never ask what's left at the bottom. One of them once said, "You're so good with money. You always find a way." Yes, I always found a way. I made things stretch. I made magic from rationing. I fed 4 people on the cost of 2. I wore the same winter coat until the lining gave out, and still I managed. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Now I hesitate when the phone rings. I wonder each time whether I'll hear a voice that says I missed you, or just another request disguised as affection. And yet, I answer, out of habit, out of hope, out of some old thread that still ties me to the idea of being a mother who provides even when her hands are tired. There was a moment not long ago when I said no, not cruelly, just gently. I'm sorry I can't help this time. The line went quiet, not even a goodbye, just a click, and then nothing. I stood there with the phone still pressed to my ear, as if the silence had something left to say. I sat down afterward, hands trembling slightly. Saying no felt like betrayal, not of them, of myself, of the role I've played for so long I forgot it wasn't the whole of me. But in that silence, a new voice emerged, my own, the one I had ignored, the one that whispered, "It's okay. You don't owe them your exhaustion." I don't offer advice much anymore. They don't really want it. They want validation or quick fixes. And when I try to offer more, the deeper things, the earned wisdom, the gentle warnings wrapped in love, I hear that tone in their voice. Dismissive, tired. Yeah, I know, Mom. As if I'm the one who doesn't understand. So now I speak less. I give less. Not to punish them, but to protect me. Because giving when it's not received with respect starts to feel like erasure. I keep my thoughts to myself now. I write them down sometimes in a little notebook I keep by the window. I write the advice I'd give if they asked, the recipes I know by heart, the lessons I learned the hard way. I write them not because I think they'll read them someday, but because it reminds me that my voice matters even if no one is listening. And slowly I've come to understand something I never allowed myself to believe before. Just because they're my children doesn't mean I must always be their well. Even a well runs dry when no one fills it. My birthday came and went this year like a breeze slipping under the door, noticeable only because of the chill it left behind. I didn't expect a big fuss. I haven't in years. But I think deep down I still hoped for something real. Not the obligatory text. Not the recycled hope you have a great one with a balloon emoji. I hoped for a voice, a knock, a memory honored. Instead, I blew out the candle alone. One single candle. I placed it in a cupcake I had bought myself at the grocery store the day before, vanilla with too much icing. I lit it, closed my eyes, and made a wish that felt too much like a whisper. Let me still matter to someone. And then I laughed, not from humor, from the quiet absurdity of it all. How a woman who once filled houses with warmth and care could now be marking her own birthday with a cupcake and silence. I remember past birthdays, not mine, theirs. The nights I stayed up late to wrap gifts, to bake cakes from scratch, even when I was bone tired. I remember the scavenger hunts, the decorations taped to the walls, the way their eyes lit up when they walked into the room, and me always in the background, clapping the loudest, smiling, the widest, never needing a turn of my own. But birthdays have a way of peeling back the layers, of revealing who still thinks of you, who pauses in their busy lives long enough to say, "You're still part of mine." That kind of pause. It's a gift you can't buy. They didn't call until late evening. One message, a picture of flowers, not real ones. just a stock image. "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope it was nice." I stared at it for a long while, trying to feel gratitude, trying to push past the hollowness it left. But I couldn't. Not entirely. I know people say you shouldn't expect much, that expectations only breed disappointment. But what they don't understand is that expecting something small, a call a moment, a laugh shared, isn't about entitlement. It's about connection. It's about feeling like someone's thought wandered into your corner of the world just for a second. Instead, I spent that evening sorting through old cards I had kept over the years, little scribbles in crayon, messages that once said, "You're the best mommy ever, and I'll take care of you when I grow up." And I believed them then. I believed every promise, every innocent vow. And maybe that's the problem, I never stopped believing. But something shifted this year, a quiet clarity. I realized I don't want to celebrate waiting anymore. I don't want to measure my worth by who remembers the date. So I got up the next morning and bought myself a gift, just a scarf, soft gray wool, warm and kind against my skin. I wrapped it around my shoulders like an embrace I had earned. I wore it while walking in the park, letting the wind kiss my cheeks, letting the sun find me through the trees. A few people smiled as they passed, and I smiled back. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. Maybe love isn't something you always receive. Maybe sometimes it's something you give yourself, one small act at a time. I still have that cupcake wrapper. I pressed it flat and tucked it into my drawer, not because the day was special, but because it marked the moment. I decided if no one else will celebrate me, I will. And next year, maybe I won't light the candle out of habit. Maybe I'll light it because I'm proud I made it another year, growing not bitter, but braver. There was a moment quiet, unremarkable to anyone but me when I stopped. Stopped reaching out first, stopped sending just checking-in messages that floated into silence, stopped initiating the love that used to flow both ways. It was a Tuesday, I remember. I was folding laundry warm towels in my lap and glanced at my phone. My last message to them had been 3 weeks earlier. Thinking of you. Hope works, not too stressful. Love you. No reply. Not even a thumbs up. I sat there staring at that unread message, the one I had sent, with a small, fluttering hope, not for a long conversation, not even a call, just a crumb of recognition, a digital pat on the shoulder, something. And nothing came. I didn't cry. Not then. I simply folded the last towel, turned the phone face down, and placed it in the drawer. That simple. That quiet. That's the moment I stopped begging. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that arrives like the settling of dust, not loud, not dramatic, just final. I had spent years pouring myself into the spaces they left empty. I sent them love like water through a broken pipe leaking steadily, never reaching where it was supposed to go. I had crafted messages that felt like little lifelines, each one cast into the digital void, hoping to be pulled back by something, anything. But I finally realized I was the only one trying to hold the thread. There is a grief in that, in watching your efforts dissolve, your voice fade into a silence that no one bothers to break. But there's also freedom, a quiet, trembling freedom. Because when you stop begging, you start breathing. I spent the rest of that day doing something I hadn't done in years, nothing. I didn't check the phone. I didn't refresh any screens. I didn't pace around wondering if I had said something wrong, or if they were too busy, or if maybe, just maybe, they were thinking of me too. I made a cup of tea and read a book I had long forgotten on the shelf. I listened to the rain tap against the windows, slow and steady, like a lullaby for the tired parts of me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt untouched, not abandoned, just unburdened. The next day, I walked past the drawer with my phone still tucked inside. I didn't reach for it. I didn't even think to. And you know what surprised me most? The peace, the space that silence made when I stopped trying to fill it. They didn't notice, of course. There were no messages asking where I'd gone. No missed calls, no alarms raised. I didn't expect any. And that somehow made it easier. Because I've learned something else too. When you stop knocking on closed doors, you hear other things. The creak of your own floorboards, the beating of your own heart, the sound of your own breath, when you're finally not holding it, waiting. I don't hate them. I never could. Love doesn't just disappear because it's unreturned, but I've learned to stop sending it out like currency, hoping for change. I sit with it now, hold it in my hands, give it to myself. A warm blanket folded at the foot of my bed, a new journal, a walk to the corner store for no reason but to buy flowers, because I like them, because they remind me that beauty doesn't need permission. And though I still love them fiercely, quietly, endlessly, I've stopped knocking. I've stopped asking to be let back into a room where no one looks up when I enter. The morning I turned off the phone for good, there was no ceremony, no grand gesture, just a soft click, a screen gone black, and the sudden feeling of the world exhaling. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I needed the quiet to mean something. I needed the silence to stop being about waiting. I needed it to be mine. That day I walked to the little shop at the edge of the neighborhood, the one with second-hand scarves and overgrown potted plants out front. I hadn't been in there for years, not since the time I went looking for a gift, and ended up talking myself out of it, thinking I could use that money for groceries instead. But this time, I walked in with no guilt. I let my fingers run along the edges of forgotten things, hand-painted mugs, a row of mismatched books, a tiny brooch shaped like a swallow in flight. And then I saw it, a scarf, soft wool, deep emerald green, the kind of green that feels like memory and forest and strength. I didn't hesitate. I wrapped it around my neck in the mirror and really saw myself, for the first time in what felt like years. No longer the tired silhouette waiting by the window. No longer the hand always holding something out to someone else. I looked like a woman who had finally begun to return home, to herself. The shopkeeper smiled and said, "That color suits you." And for once I believed it. I wore that scarf the whole walk home, even though the sun was warm and the air didn't ask for it. I wore it because it felt like a declaration, not loud but certain, like a small flag planted in the soil of my own heart. That night I cooked a real dinner, not just toast or tea or whatever needed using up. I made something I liked, roasted vegetables, rice with butter, a small glass of wine. I set the table for one, but I did it with care. Napkin folded, candle lit, a record playing softly in the background. And as I sat down, I didn't feel lonely. I felt accompanied by all the versions of me that had been buried beneath the years. I thought of the countless meals I'd made not for sustenance, but for love. Food I crafted with tenderness I thought would be remembered forever. And I realized I had forgotten to feed myself that same way. After dinner, I went out onto the porch. The sky was turning the color of old postcards, muted purples and sleepy gold. I sat with my legs tucked under me, the scarf still around my shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, I felt still, not numb, not forgotten, still. I didn't think about them, not with bitterness, not with yearning. They were elsewhere, busy, perhaps happy. That was enough. I didn't need to chase them through memory anymore. I didn't need to be remembered in order to remember myself. And in that stillness, I made a quiet promise I would stop waiting for the return. I would stop searching for echoes. I would live softly and fully with whatever pieces remained, and I would make those pieces beautiful. I smiled at a neighbor who walked by. I sipped the last of my wine and let the air kiss my face. I looked at the world not through the window of what I'd lost, but from the open door of what I might still gain. Because freedom doesn't always come with fire or fury. Sometimes it comes with a scarf, a warm plate, a deep breath. Sometimes it comes when you finally forget to wait. I was standing at the bathroom mirror one morning brushing my hair in slow, careful strokes when it struck me I didn't recognize the woman staring back. The lines around her mouth had deepened. Her shoulders curled inward just slightly, as if she'd spent too long holding in too many things. There was a softness to her head that hadn't always been there, and an ache behind the eyes that came from knowing too much and saying too little. But beneath all that, there was still something, a flicker, a memory of strength. I used to be strong, not loud strong, but steady strong. I kept schedules like sacred texts. I could hold a crying child in one arm, balance a grocery bag in the other, and somehow still remember to send thank you notes and clip coupons. I stitched up dresses, settled arguments, ran a house like a ship no storm could sink. I wore my resilience like a second skin, soft on the outside, steel underneath. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being that woman. Or maybe I let everyone believe that was all I was, that I existed only for others, that my worth began and ended with how well I could disappear behind their needs. But that morning, with the comb in my hand and the sun coming in soft through the blinds, I said her name out loud. Mine. My name. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Not, "Can you do this for me?" Just the name I was given before anyone ever asked anything of me. And I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I hadn't heard it in so long. I opened the drawer and pulled out a pair of earrings I hadn't worn in years. Simple silver hoops. I used to wear them when I felt beautiful, back when I laughed with friends over coffee, back when I danced a little in the kitchen just because. I put them on. No one saw, but I did, and I mattered enough for that. That day I wrote a list, not of chores, not of groceries, but of things I wanted to do, just for me. Go to the museum, try that cafe with the lavender tea, paint again, sit on the bench by the lake and read something that has nothing to do with anyone else. And slowly I started crossing things off. I rediscovered corners of myself I hadn't visited in decades, the way I still hum when I'm content, the way a soft fabric can lift my mood, the way I love the smell of old paperbacks and fresh dill. Small things, forgotten things, but they are mine. It wasn't a sudden transformation. I didn't become someone new. I simply remembered the woman I was before everyone needed me, before I became the scaffolding that held other lives upright. And it turns out she's still here. She never left. She was just quiet, waiting, watching, holding on until I was ready to look at her again. I'm not unkind to them, my family. I still answer when they call, when they remember. But now, I don't pause my life. I don't erase my plans. I don't say of course when my heart wants to say not today. Because I'm not just someone's mother, or grandmother, or afterthought. I am someone, still. And I don't need an audience to prove it. I only needed to turn toward the mirror and say, "There you are. I've missed you." I still love them, every one of them. That hasn't changed. What has changed is how I carry that love now, more like a soft shawl draped around my shoulders than a weight dragging behind me. It used to be a kind of desperation, a grasping a need to be seen, to be remembered, to be central in their lives. But now it's quieter, still real, still deep, but quieter. I no longer wait by the phone. I no longer hold my breath at holidays. I no longer fill the fridge with their favorite foods just in case. I've learned that the kind of love I gave unconditional, all-consuming, often isn't returned in the same way, and that doesn't make it worthless. It makes it mine. There's a photo on my desk now, just me, no one else, taken last week by a woman I met in the park. She asked if I wanted one. I almost said no, but something made me say yes. I'm sitting on a bench reading the scarf around my neck, and there's this softness in my smile that made me pause the first time I saw it. Not posed, not for anyone, just peace. Peace didn't come easy. It came after tears, after letting go, after 1,000 moments of quiet heartbreak. But it came, and with it, something I never thought I'd feel again. Freedom. The freedom not to perform, not to prove, not to beg. The freedom to simply be exactly as I am, exactly as I wish to be, even if no one else claps or notices or comes along for the ride. I don't hate them for forgetting. I've come to understand that forgetting is just something people do, especially when they feel safe. They forgot I was still here, waiting, needing, because I made it look easy. I made love look effortless, and maybe that was my mistake. But even mistakes, when held gently, can become lessons. So now I light candles for myself. I take walks without purpose. I write letters I don't send just to hear my own truth written out. I smile at strangers. I buy the flowers. I let myself rest when I'm tired. I dance in the kitchen sometimes to songs no one else would recognize. Old melodies from another life. A younger woman's heartbeat still echoing in mine. And I love them, still, fiercely, but from a distance that keeps me whole. I send them my love in the breeze, in the smell of warm bread, in the silent prayers I whisper without waiting for answers. I send it without conditions, without expectation. I send it because it's who I am, not because of who they are. But I don't chase anymore. I don't plead. I don't ache the way I used to. Because I've learned that love doesn't always need to be loud to be real. Sometimes it's just a woman sitting at her kitchen table stirring tea, whispering a blessing into the steam, not for them, but for herself. The night is quiet now. The lights are low, the dishes are done, and the tea has long gone cold beside me. I sit by the window, watching the world slip into stillness, the way the trees hush their rustling, the sky blurs into velvet, the houses dim one by one. I am alone, but I am not lonely, not like I once was, because something inside me has shifted, not loudly, not all at once, but gently, like a tide returning to shore. I no longer wait for voices that won't come. I no longer write invisible invitations with every glance at the door. I still love them. I always will. But I've stopped waiting for that love to be noticed or mirrored or even acknowledged. And in that surrender, I've found something I didn't know I needed: peace. The kind of peace that feels like a deep exhale, like taking off shoes that pinched for far too long, like lying down in a bed you've made for yourself just the way you like it. I think of all the versions of me that loved out loud, that bent without breaking, that stayed soft, even when it hurt. And I thank her. I thank every woman I've been, every silent sacrifice, every unspoken hope. And now I give her this gift: quiet, freedom, the slow joy of being hers alone. Because they forgot me, but I never forgot myself. And I didn't need to be loud. I just needed to leave.